The Chair of the Public Works Committee. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Councilmember Alarcon and Councilmember Smith. This is the Public Works Committee, and City Clerk, would you like to call the first item, please? I don't think we have any consent items today, so if you could just call the first item, please.
Item number 1, City Engineer Report, Mitigated Negative Declaration, Final Initial Study, and Addendum to Final Initial Study relative to the vacation of Lion Street, northerly of Cesar E. Chavez Avenue, and easterly of Vignes Street in connection with the Metro Union Division Bus Maintenance and Operations Facility Project, Vacation E14011141. One technical correction, the Mitigated Negative Declaration is NG09549 MTA.
Thank you. Is there a staff report on this item?
Mr. Chairman, Paul Smith, CLA. I understand the petitioner, in this case the MTA, and their developer would like to have this matter continued for 2 weeks. There's some discrepancy on the boundaries of the vacation and the designation of the street. I've been told that they can work this out within a short period of time and get back to this committee.
Sure, I'd be happy to continue this 2 weeks. And you are?
Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Garola. I am with LA County Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Okay.
The only thing that I would like to ask is if we can resolve maybe one of the issues now in regards to waiving maybe the 5-foot dedication on Cesar Chavez and Vignes. And then we can work out the other issues over the next 2 weeks.
I'd prefer that we just keep it all together, because once we start separating it, we approve one thing here and there, and I'd rather see it whole before.
That's fine.
So we could just continue the whole item for 2 weeks, and we'll be back. Thank you very much. Next item?
Item number 2, motion, Coretz Labange, relative to developing a proposal to increase the penalty for illegal tree pruning, formerly Council File Number 01-0867.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. George Gonzalez, Bureau of Street Services. I believe that this motion has been heard by your committee September 2nd and actually been approved by full council September 22nd, where it's relative to the amending of LA Municipal Code 4600 and 62162. I'm not sure where this motion, because it looks like it addresses the same issues that this committee resolved, like I said.
Does it use the exact same language, or is it any way that it's slightly different?
I was looking at both motions, and the verbiage is somewhat different, but the content is essentially the same.
Sorry, we're talking about item number 2?
No, item number 2, yes.
What other motion is he talking about?
The motion I'm looking at here is a motion by Councilmember Coretz, and you want me to read it?
No, what's the other motion?
The other motion, though, you say was passed before by full council.
I remember discussing
Because I don't have the motion.
You don't?
I do. Yeah.
What I have here is a report from the Public Works Committee, and it says Public Works Committee reports relative to the amendment Los Angeles Municipal Code, Section 4600 and 62162, to add monetary administrative penalties to improve the enforcement of the ordinance to protect the urban forest, and so forth. So
For the
on.
Right. So what you're saying is that it's similar. Is Sean Bayless from CD5 here?
Yes.
Yes. You want to come on up?
For the record, could you please state the council file number for that other motion?
The other motion.
Yes.
The one you say
Yes.
was passed by council already.
Yes, 091664.
Now, would you mind, Mr. Bayless, as a representative of CD5 who put forward this motion, if you could, we continue this item, we could give you some time to work it out with staff to see if there's any difference between the two. If there's none, it's already in the works. If there is, what the intent is of Mr. Koretz, and we could propose that, but
Sure.
any comments on that? Yeah.
Sean Bayless, Councilman Paul Kretz's office. Sure. There's no need to rewrite the book if it's already been written. So I was not aware of Council File 091664, which has already been approved by council. If it comes to the same conclusion, we couldn't be happier. We can already be done with it.
Well, why don't we give you guys 2 weeks, confirm that, work
Sure.
it out with staff, and then let us know when we come back if it seems like it's a good motion, but,
Yeah.
Mr. Alarcon?
I don't like the motion, to tell you the truth, but what was, with the previous motion, we increased the penalties, or we
We established a penalty.
established a penalty?
Right, and also,
Now,
Yeah.
are we trimming trees at a rate that keeps them pruned properly?
is there a pruning cycle, an adequate pruning cycle? Not in my opinion, no.
Well, in anybody's opinion. Do you know anybody who thinks we're trimming trees at the rate we should be to keep them pruned?
Certainly not,
So how
not
can
industry
you be
standards.
penalizing people for pruning their trees when they're getting out of hand?
Well, that would be improper pruning of it. We certainly recommend, or we issue permits, trimming permits, and even when permits are not issued, if the tree is trimmed appropriately, there's no penalty for that. It's when trees are butchered, and primarily when trees are removed illegally. If we don't have,
So the concern I would have is the problem that is mentioned in the intent language before the therefores on Mr. Corrett's motion talks about illegal removal of street trees.
correct.
The motion doesn't speak to illegal removal, it speaks to pruning. The question of what kind of pruning will be penalized and won't, I think should be specified.
And that's what the ones that you already approved does specify, illegal pruning to the point where the tree is structurally unsound.
Okay.
So that does,
That sounds to me
Yeah.
to be reasonable. That's probably why I voted for it.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. When we come back in 2 weeks, be prepared to give us a brief presentation on what we actually adopted, so we can be very clear on what we actually adopted.
Yeah, but I want to make it clear to Mr. Koretz that in a city that can't keep up with its tree trimming, we can't just make unilateral policies saying that people are going to get fined for trimming trees.
But anybody that's got a tree problem can get a permit to do it if they want.
Yeah.
And what's been happening is we've had a lot of instances where the billboard companies are coming out and just chopping the top of the tree
I
off.
appreciate that.
And that's
but that's
not
not
right.
what the motion said.
Yeah, but that was the original motion that we dealt with a number of months ago, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll be back in 2 weeks if Mr. Koretz's office could clarify
If
with
I ever
staff.
get cited for trimming the trees, I'm going to be really angry.
As long as you pull a permit, sir.
Mr. Clyde Williams
I want to
on,
get it done.
Clyde Williams on number 2.
Watering on the wrong day.
Want to come up, Mr. Williams?
Water conservationist guy.
Oh, that was the other bell. Mr. Williams, welcome.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. This is really largely unenforceable. So, might say I'm guilty because I pruned because there are tree branches coming down into the travel way of the road.
Officer, arrest that man.
Wouldn't be the first time. Nor the last, probably. But, okay, we had a 30-inch bay tree on a private property. It took 4 days for the people to cut it down. No licensed contractor or anything. There were numerous complaints being issued. But street services, urban forestry, couldn't do anything. They just don't have the people, the time, the inclination, even when they're noticed. So it's kind of it's almost a moot point. You know, approve it, who cares? Nobody will enforce it. Along with the fact that there is a California state law under the Department of Fish and Game that says you can't trim trees unless you have inspected the tree for bird nests. And the LA Audubon Society Angeles chapter has a very nice guidelines for tree trimming. And one of the first things is that it's approved by the California Department of Fish and Game. And it says you can't trim it unless you've inspected for nests and found that you don't trim until the nest is vacated. Once the nest is vacated, boom, cut away. However, it sounds good, it makes everybody happy, but it's largely unenforceable. And I go back to an old contractor's point, specifications are only as good as the enforcement behind them. If there's no enforcement, don't have any specifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, Dr. Williams. Thank you. We'll continue this item for 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item number 3, communication from the Education Neighborhoods Committee relative to the development of a template to allow neighborhood councils to partner with the Million Trees Initiative. Council referred this matter to the Education Neighborhoods and Public Works Committees on May 11, 2007.
Good afternoon, council members. Lisa Sarno with Million Trees LA. With respect to this particular motion, just wanted to forward some information to you regarding the template. We actually did put together a template back in June 2007 and forwarded that to the department to basically be able to announce that to the neighborhood councils as to what they can do working with and partnering with Million Trees to get more green and more trees in their communities. We then again forwarded the template in August of 2008. To date, we ourselves, independent of the department, Million Trees LA has reached out to the neighbor councils. In the last 2 years, we have been working with numerous various neighbor councils across the city of Los Angeles. Some recent examples was that Million Trees LA did fund the first phase of the Downtown Neighbor Council Alameda Corridor planting that just recently happened. We also participated recently in the Neighbor Council Park Day, and also we are currently working with the Porter Ranch Neighbor Council and also with a neighbor council out in South LA. So we have independent of the department, have been reaching out and coordinating and contacting the neighbor councils and partnering with them to put more green and more trees into their communities and neighborhoods.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, why do we need a template?
It was something that we put together to help neighbor councils basically know more about Million Trees LA and how they can do greening and tree planting as a community outreach effort. So we put the template together, and Million Trees did that. Again, that was independent of any request from the department or city council. We did that to basically be able to reach out to the neighbor councils to partner with us.
Oh, so what is a template?
The template is right here.
Yeah, I don't have one in here. Like an agreement, or?
It's just basically a summary of what they can do.
Oh, I see.
With our neighbor councils. But we also do more than that as we got used to them. We're also sharing cost with neighbor councils for the maintenance of the trees that we're putting into their communities. So there is a maintenance component to all the tree plantings that we're doing with our neighbor councils.
Great.
Cool.
Any other questions, comments? Well, good work. How many trees have been planted so far?
Well, the good news is that based on my colleague over here, we understand that the city of Los Angeles used to plant about 10,000 trees annually before the Million Tree program started in late September 2006. To date, we have planted above 250,000.
Do you have that by council district area?
We do. Actually, we do catalog and log our trees that we plant by zip code. So we do have that information. If you'd like that, I'd be more than happy to give it to you.
Good, because when this initiative was announced, Council President Garcetti said he was going to plant 100,000 in his district, so I upped him one and said I'll do 101,000.
We need to be we need to be talking to both your council offices. Yes, we would love the help.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll move to adopt this report.
There was a second part about watering trucks.
Sorry?
There was a second part of the motion about watering trucks.
Yeah.
Which we're obviously not going to be able to buy, but
And we did put in a request for watering trucks, and you can imagine where that went.
yeah.
Down the drain.
But the trees are being watered in a variety of ways. We do still have water trucks that we water the trees that are Bureau plants. Also, Million Trees LA has a variety of ways there.
We actually contract, and council members, just want to note that, Million Trees LA does not receive any direct funding from the city's general fund. So basically, we're funded through corporate partnerships and grants. But what we do is we contract with NGOs, several NGOs throughout the city of Los Angeles, and we hire them to go out and water the trees per trees weekly, and in summer months, sometimes twice to 3 times a week. So what we do is we also Million Trees has created green job opportunities for youth around the city. And last year, we were able to help hire and employ about 1,400.
You said they water them 3 times a week?
Depending on the weather and the need, normally what happens is they go out once a week.
Into the city's policy to water just on Mondays and Thursdays.
That's
water.
that's sprinkler irrigation.
Right. It's a hand watering situation.
So you can water with a hose?
It's with a water truck, yes, and a hose.
So if you're watering with a hose, you can water 7 days a week?
Yes.
Okay, so if we could also amend recommendation number 3 to ask the CLA CEO to list what are the costs to water trees for 2 years?
I hand water.
Could I amend recommendation number 3, include that
I hand
request for CLA CEO? Got it. Okay. Thank you. So moved, so ordered.
Mr. Chair, for clarification, we are approving the initial motion or subsequent committee reports before they were sent back?
It's my impression we are adopting the subsequent committee reports. Very good. Yeah. With that amendment to recommendation number 3. Thank you very much. Next item? Oh, no, we have, I'm sorry, Dr. Williams on number 3.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno. We're already doing this. In Arroyo Seco, they recently passed a motion for $1,500 for watering trees along Marmion Way for 1 year. So might say we're already doing this. So it'd be nice to see what their template is because we're in the process of doing it. One of the problems always with street trees is getting the permission and commitment of the owners of the properties to have the trees planted and to protect them and to water them. Usually this is done through the Street Services Urban Forestry. So it's a combination. If you don't have the owner's permission, you can't do it. And LA 32, we're trying to get people to commit to these things, which also includes watering. Sometimes you can get the people that are even renting to water. So there's a problem that 50% of the population of LA are renters. Therefore, they cannot commit legally to having a street tree. Therefore, all the rental areas are R2 or above have to have usually an absentee landowner to commit to it. They don't want to. So I don't know how relevant this template would be. Where many, or at least 2 neighborhood councils are already committed to trying to get more street trees and or trees for Elephant Hill and or Ascot Park. Watering is always the issue. So if you have a template, you got to include a watering provision within that template. So again, get a hold of Jerry Snyder. He's been doing it for Marmion Way. We put in 30 cubic yards of mulch in a matter of 4 hours. So when the neighborhood councils are involved, they will do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Item number 4, motion Han Gruel relative to directing the Department of Public Works to report in regard to its current approach to handling complaints about ficus trees damaging public sidewalks and the feasibility of establishing a pilot program to allow council offices to select limited locations to remove ficus trees.
Okay.
It's not that I like this seat, but I think every item here I'm going to be speaking on.
It's your day, that's what
we did submit a report sometime back. My report's mixed up here. I believe it was in 2007, and we briefly touched on the issue of ficus trees. The report was a more substantive report about urban forestry and street tree policies in general, and it touched on the issue of ficus trees. Our ficus trees get a bit of a bad rap in the city. Most people look at a ficus tree and they see the damage they cause, and they do cause damage in certain situations, but they don't look at the other side of it. The ficus tree is probably it's been quantified by the U.S. Forest Service as the #1 producer of environmental services. That is stormwater capture, removal of particulate matter from the atmosphere of any other tree that we have in our urban forest. So it is a double-edged sword here. We do get damage from them, but we get a lot of benefits from them as well. So that's why the Bureau has taken a policy when we had our sidewalk repair program to try to preserve ficus trees, and not just ficus trees, but any trees that we could preserve, mature trees that we could preserve, try to preserve them on site, because it's the mature trees that you get the maximum benefits from. The younger trees, they may take 15, 20 years before you start reaping the benefits that you're going to get from a mature tree. So that's been our issue with the ficus tree. We don't see the ficus tree as any more problematic than another half dozen other trees that you could name and have the same problems as the ficus trees.
But the city's planting mostly ficus trees.
No, we have, I don't think we planted ficus trees since probably the early 90s.
Is it on the list of approved trees? I thought it was removed.
There is ficus as a genus. There's a couple of species that are on our approved list. It's not the ficus nitida, which is the most common one that you'll see out the window here, but it is a ficus tree that is less problematic with causing root damage.
Is there someone here from Ms. Hahn's office? No. And I think the intent of this motion, as I'm reading it, is to get to the issue of overgrown trees. I mean, I don't think the issue is ficus. So we continue this for 60 days and ask you to come back and report on specifically what this motion is asking for, which is on the approach to handling complaints about ficus trees damaging public sidewalks and making them difficult to traverse, as well as the feasibility of establishing a pilot program to allow council offices to select limited locations to remove ficus trees. I think what they're trying to get at is any tree that damages sidewalks. So if you could come back to us in 60 days and report to us what's your approach to handling that. I mean, it's pretty broad, but you know, all our council offices I know are dealing with this issue, and and now that we have no money for sidewalk improvements, so we cut the last remaining funding for sidewalk improvements from our budget this past year. We are only going to fix what's legally required now. You know, it's going to become a bigger problem. So if you could come back to us in 60 days and report specifically on that issue. How is it that you handle overgrown trees in general on the sidewalk area?
Okay.
And maybe George should meet with Ms. Hahn's office and have
Yeah.
a conversation with her.
Will do.
Yeah. Okay. We'll continue this item for 60 days and get a report back on that. Next item. I'm sorry. Again, Dr. Williams is here. Dr. Williams?
And thank you for wearing green on Tree Day.
El Sereno, okay? I do this all the time with the Board of Public Works because they have a lot more trees. Okay, don't blame the ficus. Being a defender of the ficus, here's the best way. Go out the north door of City Hall, look at the north edge of the City Hall property, and then look at the county property. They have ficus over there. Go over, walk along the sidewalk. There's no problem there. So ficus gets a bum rap. If it's placed properly, And if you can get the watering down below rather than under the pavement, then they seem to be quite friendly to the pavement, to the curbs, to the sidewalks. DWP has a substation down in San Pedro that kind of strange ficus because they only go up around 30 feet, and they've been trimmed for maybe 30 years below the high voltage power lines that go across them. So even DWP seems to be happy with the ficus. So I say, don't blame the ficus, blame, a poor workman blames his tools. If it's put in wrong, if there's not enough root area, hey, it's going to seek its own water, seek its own path, but just walk over to the county building right next door. They have wonderful ficus, and during the summertime, it's a great place to just sit and watch the traffic go by. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So that item would be continued for 60 days. Next item.
Item number 5, motion Perry Parks relative to directing the Bureau of Street Services in consultation with the involved community groups to report with recommendations for maintaining and enhancing the unique pink cloud cherry trees on Central Avenue in Little Tokyo and restoring this collection to its original number of 42 trees, formerly Council File Number 05-1073-S67.
Let's first hear from our department, and then we'll hear from the public. So,
Okay, let me start by saying we were not aware of this motion until just very recently.
okay.
And the pink cloud cherry trees that were growing on Central were just recently all replaced with another species. Let me give you a little bit of history on the trees out there, and I'll get to where we're at now. About 9 years ago, those trees were planted on Central Avenue. The species, the pink cloud, cherry tree, sorry, plum tree, cherry tree. Pink cloud cherry tree is native to Japan. It's recommended for climate zones 9 through 10. We're in climate zone, I'm sorry, 5 through 9. We're in climate zone 10 here, so the tree's already outside of its recommended climate zone. To make things worse is where they're planted on Central Avenue. They're in small 4x4 foot cutouts. They're adjacent to a large parking structure which reflects heat onto the trees, and we've had nothing but problems with the trees. On an average tree planting, we expect about 10% mortality. That is, 10% of the trees are not going to make it. We go back and replace them. On this planting, we've had 100% mortality. We've replaced the trees over the 9 years. We've replaced the trees at least 5 times. There are other trees, other pink cloud cherry trees growing on private property, as a matter of fact, right across from one of those on Office Depot property, and they're also struggling. They're just a tree that don't do well in this climate. Now, in Balboa Park, we have some cherry trees out there, and just that distance from being out in the valley is enough where the trees are doing relatively well there. But what I understand is that there was quite a bit of remediation done to the soil before the trees were planted. They were planted on very specific rootstock that these trees weren't planted in. And they're planted in a park setting as opposed to a sidewalk setting. So with all that background, there was the Pedestrian Linkage program just recently went through, and LA Department of Transportation was in charge of was the lead on that program, and they were going to plant additional trees. We told them what the concerns were with the cherry trees. So and we recommended some other species that had a similar appearance to the cherry trees, but didn't have the problems with the site as the cherry trees have. My understanding is that the replacement recommendation was vetted to the community and was approved by the community, and the new called tababuya trees, pink trumpet trees, were planted very recently, just in the last couple of weeks. Actually, if you get a chance, I would recommend walk down there and take a look at them. They're very nice. But that's where we're at now.
So you planted the trumpet cherry trees because they would have a better chance of survival than the pink cloud cherry trees.
Correct.
So they've been planted. How many were planted?
I believe it was 38. I know there's 4 of the cherry trees still existing. We left 4 that were in relatively good shape there.
Yeah, the pink cloud cherry trees are still.
The pink cloud,
4 of them.
4 of them left,
Okay.
but all the other ones were removed.
Okay. Council District 9, would you rather speak now or after our one public speaker here? Okay, we have one public speaker, and then we'll continue the discussion. Tom Kamai?
Yes, Tom Kamei. I'm the chairman of the beautification committee of the Little Tokyo Community Council. And 10 years ago, that area was not very pretty. The vacant lots and Office Depot was still being planned, and we wanted to beautify the place. So when they widened the sidewalks on Central Avenue, we thought we'd like to plant the sakura cherry trees, which is very significant in the Japanese culture and very dear to our hearts. And we originally planned on having the community who donated for the planting of the trees to take care of their individual trees. But that plan was overturned by some of the people from the city, so we were not able to do that. But I have to disagree with the fact that the city replanted the cherry trees. We did some replanting, and I don't recall the city coming to replant them. Also, you have said that you came to the community to replant the trees, that is for the pink trumpet trees, but I have never heard that. And I wish they had come to us. We could have explained how cherry trees behave in this climate. During the summertime, they don't look good. They look dead, but then come springtime, they have wonderful blossoms. We've enjoyed that for 9 years, but now we don't have any. But there's one tree in front of the Cuban restaurant is doing well. And it goes to show that with proper care, it'll thrive. Maybe it's the dishwater from the restaurant, but anyway, it's a beautiful tree.
2 more after this. Thank you very much, Mr. Kamei. Greg Fisher from Council District 9.
Good afternoon, council members. Greg Fisher, Council District 9. Council office was unaware that this tree planting was to take place, and is very sensitive to the cherry tree issue, as it is a cultural issue for the Japanese American community. I think at this point we would respectfully request a 60-day window to study this further, because apparently the community is also surprised by this. And rather than point fingers or get into a discussion about why or what we do with these cherry trees, I'd like to talk to the Bureau of Street Services and see if we can come up with a solution that works for all sides.
Accepted. We'll continue this item for 60 days, and if our staff could work with City 9 and report back to committee before it goes to council on how we could resolve this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 items left, and our colleagues we need to finish this meeting by 3 o'clock, so we have 10 minutes. We'll start number 6, and I think we could get through these rather quickly, so if we could go
Move
to
approval.
item number 6, please.
Item number 6, motion Labange Han relative to directing the Department of Public Works Office of Community Beautification to report in regard to a program that would involve the planting of vines to cover walls instead of repainting graffiti and related matters.
Okay, so this item here is simply requesting that we get a report back on this, if we could continue this. Department staff here?
Julia Moy, Bureau of Engineering. Unfortunately, the director of the office, Paul Rax, is out, and he didn't have a replacement that could come today, but they're happy to report back in 30 days as requested by
They're
the
fine with
committee.
30 days?
Mhm.
Okay. We'll get a report back on 30 days on that item. Next item.
Item number 7, continued from February 4th, 2009. Joint City Engineer and Bureau of Street Services report in response to motion of Rosendahl and Garcetti relative to the utilization of drought-resistant landscapes for parkway landscapes and related matters, formerly Council File Number 012640.
Welcome. This is also asking for a report back, or do we have a,
Actually, it kind of goes along with board policy already, doesn't it? That,
Yeah.
And
Charlie Daniels has been working on all that.
Lance Wisha with the Bureau of Street Services.
Yeah.
We did submit a report back in January 29th of earlier this year that responded to the council motion.
That's right.
And at that time, I guess there was, I'm not sure why the motion was carried over or why it was, we were asked to come back. But there were a couple other things that were left outstanding, but we are addressing those at this time. One was putting the information up on a web page, and so that's going forward. The enforcement per the motion was suspended, and so that has not, we haven't had any other cases where we've gone out and proactively hunted down illegal parkway planting, so to speak. And so we, even with the information that will be posted on the website, we'll talk about enforcement issues. So our suggestion at this point would be to close the file unless there's something else that we'd like to do further with it.
Great. Mr. Larcon?
Have you investigated the use of green paint?
I'm sorry?
Have you investigated the use of green paint
Green paint on a sidewalk
on the
or on the...
parkway?
Parkways are usually planted. So unless we're talking about painting the dirt, which is a very temporary measure, no.
It's being used all across the country.
On hard paved surfaces, yes. And on hard paved surfaces, yes, it
No.
has.
No.
I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry.
Okay, can you investigate that? Because I know Arizona's doing a lot of work with it, but even in San Bernardino, private properties are using some kind of special formula that is environmentally safe to improve the look. So it's not landscaped, it's paint.
And it's not to be confused with artificial turf or something of that nature.
I know the difference.
I'm just,
It's paint.
I'm trying to figure it.
It's been promoted in the news for months, and I asked this question before, and actually I've had positive responses from staff. I just wanted to know if you, in consideration of this particular request, there are a lot of dirt-oriented parkways that might be improved by just simply using green paint.
We'll look into it and report
And
back.
it is better in terms of water savings, and it isn't short-term.
We'll look into and report back.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Clyde Williams. And before our colleagues leave, we'll do a note and file on item number 7. With their approval, so ordered. Dr.
Let's go
Clyde
home.
Williams.
Bermuda grass works very well. There are several species of Bermuda grasses that are used by golf courses, especially in the Caribbean and elsewhere. In Dubai, United Arab Emirates, we were using it, and the transpiration was horrendous there. So it's about the only thing that will work in this particular thing. So just put it on Google. Turf grasses, Bermuda grasses, Paspalium. So easy. Okay. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll know and file this item. We have one general public comment. Doug Owens.
Good afternoon. On October 26th, changes to Section 4120 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code took effect. The changes were cast as special event permit fee modifications. However, in some subsection A, additional language was added to the ordinance that has implications for free speech and labor activity that I think could put the city at risk of litigation. Consider, if you will, that an organization may use a special event permit solely to stop free speech or labor demonstrations. Such incidences have occurred with the Church of Scientology against lawful protesters. The 1026 changes to 4120A state in part, no person shall in any manner interfere with the progress of an orderly conduct of a permitted special event. The previous version of 4120 had no such language. The chief legislative analyst's request dated 5/16/2008, however, contained in their request the language, non-commercial events shall be defined as an event that is open to the public, open parentheses, in the event of block parties, all residents living within the block party areas, close parentheses, free of charge and without restriction. In fact, the Bureau of Street Services special events petitions for residential and commercial street and sidewalk closures state the public at large may not be denied access to any portion of any street except in cases of emergency. Chief Inspector Gary Harris of Bureau of Street Services Enforcement Division has stated to me that their street closure permits cannot be used to exclude the general public except in cases of emergency or public safety. The president of the Public Works Board and the commissioner have both stated this as well in a public meeting. The changes to 4128 are overly vague. Ordinance 4120A should be amended with a clause stating that it does not apply to lawful free speech and labor union activity. And I request that this committee go on record to state the legislative intent of 4120A is not to allow a permittee to interfere with lawful free speech or labor activity. Basically, I'm concerned with how the Los Angeles Police Department will interpret this clause in the ordinance.
Great, thank you. Do you have those comments in writing that you can submit?
I do. In fact, I gave them to the clerk.
Okay, we'll take those under review and have our CLA review them and make a recommendation to this committee.
Thank you very much.
On your comments. Okay, thank you. That concludes the Public Works Committee.